Welcome to another episode with 2 on 1. This is your host, Michael Vetrano, along with my partner in crime, Michael Torriero. Today's guest is the pride of Suffolk County, New York State, Penn State, the United States. That's Kerry McCoy.
Hey guys, how we doing?
How are you,
Great,
Coach?
welcome, brother. Great to see you.
Oh yeah, always good to chop it up with some Long Island boys.
Coach, we have so many things to talk about. Where are you now? Where are you coming from? Where are you right now? Where are you located right now?
I'm out in the great state of California, Palo Alto. I live about a block away from Stanford's campus, so it's pretty nice digs out here. So excited to be joining you guys from the left coast.
The weather's definitely a bit nicer than where we're at, right, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Detroit, and it's been, snowy, gray, and cold since July.
Yeah. No, I hate to rub it in, but it was 80 degrees the other day, sunshine. I mean, I put shorts on, and not one of those weird guys that wears shorts in the middle of the winter just to say it, but actually was hot enough to wear shorts and a t-shirt. So pretty nice.
Coach, for those the few wrestling fans that don't know about you, just kind of give us a once over what it was like to, a boy growing up in Middle Island, Suffolk County, New York, then winning that county title and New York State title, and then multiple-time All-American at Penn State, then world silver medalist at Madison Square Garden. I can't imagine what that must be like. And then Olympian, and then coaching in the Big Ten, and then on Stanford, all the great things. You kind of walk us through that, from kind of A to Z.
A to Z. Well, we might be here for a little bit. I'll give you the cliff notes. So the easy story, when I started wrestling in 7th grade, so it's pretty late for a lot of people that have had a high level of success. A lot of the the more successful wrestlers have started at 4, 5, 6 years old. So starting at 12 years old, no concept of what wrestling was, had no one in my family that wrestled. I had a buddy from kindergarten that was in kid wrestling in our neighborhood, and said, why don't you try it? So, and I tell the story all the time. I won't go into full details, but I thought wrestling was WWE, WWF back then, right? Hulk Hogan, Jimmy Snuka, Andre the Giant.
You were big enough to probably be in the WWE.
Not there, but so that's what I thought it was, and so I had no clue. Showed up for the first practice and fell in love with it right away. My first year wrestling, 7th grade, I didn't get one competitive match. I was, and people, when I tell people I fell in love with it, they say you must have been pretty good. I was terrible. I was definitely one of the worst guys in the room. And but I wanted to get better, and I had a simple goal, just to get better every day. And I had great coaches, great workout partners, great people surrounding me, and really put me in a position to be successful. And fast forward 5 years later, I was a state champ, state runner-up as a junior, won the counties. And when people talk about some of my best moments in wrestling, one of the ones that sticks out is my junior year winning the county championship was one of the highlights of my career to this point. And it was really, Nicky Hall was a year older than me. He was a senior youth captain. He was the guy that really set the standard for a lot of Long Island wrestling, but especially at Longwood. With some others that came before, but he was my workout partner, and we came together and we put a game plan together to wrestle the guy. His name is Jason Dove. He was from Hop Hog, and this is back in the day when New York only sent one person per section to the state tournament, so you had to win to go. And so we scouted him, and we had a game plan, and it was the first time I had done that in my wrestling career, and it laid the foundation for later on. So I said that was one of the most significant matches, but experiences overall to prepare for that. And then went on and, made it to the state finals, took second. And then after that, rolled through and won a state title, and then went to college, went to Penn State. And, funny story at Penn State, I had similar to the sport of wrestling, I had no concept of what Penn State was. Growing up in New York, growing up on Long Island, when you hear State University, you're thinking Brockport, Bingham, those schools, Cortland, right? Stony Brook. And, so you're like, okay, this is what my picture was. So when I heard State University of Pennsylvania, I'm thinking State University of New York, like, small D3 type schools, in the middle of nowhere. And I was a little bit off with that. So, but Penn State,
I would say so.
Penn State wasn't, they were on my radar. And another Long Island legend, Jason Kraft, who was, wrestling
right?
station. Went to Nebraska. But the reason Penn State started recruiting me, because Jason and I, we were great friends, but we were rivals along with Sachem. And he was really heavily into Penn State, and they recruited him. Dan Mayo graduated from Sachem, and Jimbo Elliott was a Sachem guy that went to Penn State. So he had these connections to Penn State. He had wanted to go to Penn State. So in his mind, we had been on opposing teams for so long outside of the off-season national team wrestling, and he thought it would be a great idea if we could go to the same place. So he actually turned Penn State on to me during the recruiting process, and but I had very little interest in Penn State when we started. Now again, shift back, I hate to say it, almost 30 years, right, where recruiting was a lot different back then. So this was, junior year, I really had no real concept of what college was, and they started recruiting in the going into your senior years when you started getting letters, and it was a one phone call a week, and it was letters in the mail. So there was really not a big push, and through that process they came to see us. But I think the first time I had direct in-person contact was in the middle of the wrestling season. They came to watch us. They came to watch a duel, and so that was my Penn State deal. And I was looking more at academic schools, Ivy League schools, and came down to Penn State, Michigan. And I tell people a story. I was actually on my recruiting visit at Penn State, because my visit to Michigan was the weekend before. It was Thursday, Friday, Saturday in Michigan, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday in Penn State in the same weekend.
That's
so
the weekend. Yeah.
The weekend that I was in Michigan was the weekend that the Fab Five, that I'm a year younger than them, so they had won the Final Four and they had made the championship game. So I was in Ann Arbor, Friday night for the semifinals, and then Friday or Saturday night, whichever night the game was, and then on Sunday, Monday, I was in State College, and we actually watched a championship game. And I remember telling, the guys at Penn State, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to be going to school with those guys next year. And, it's going to be awesome to be at Michigan. And it was one of those situations where I was at Michigan, I went directly from Michigan to Penn State. So if I had a chance to go home, I probably would have canceled my visit to Penn State, because I thought I was set on going to Michigan,
Wow.
But I'd given my word that I was going to go visit, had a great time. I had, kind of grew up liking Michigan, and that's where I wanted to go. But when I went to Penn State, it just felt like I was home. Every place else I went, I was on a recruiting visit. When I went to Penn State, I felt like I was just with my teammate, with my family. So that's how I got to Penn State. And, New York State champ, two-time runner-up, or two-time finalist, one-time runner-up. And, went in and I lost 17 matches my first year. So as a freshman, true freshman wrestling, lost 17 matches. And, it was pretty rough. And I never, the support never wavered, at least, to my face. And maybe behind the scenes, people were a little bit questioning it, but, always had a pat in the back and, encouragement. And, after that, I went 131-1 and won two national
going up a weight
championships.
class, right? As you got older, you changed weight classes, right?
Yeah. So I wrestled 190 my freshman year, and then I, moved up to heavyweight after that. And, that was even it wasn't a plan. It wasn't by design. We had our wrestle offs, and then the Sunkiss tournament that I, freestyle, and then our first competition. So that was 3 successive weekends. So I didn't want to cut down to 190 for the wrestle off and then go up. I was going to wrestle 220 freestyle and then have to cut back down to 190. So I talked to my coaches, because back then our wrestle offs were more of a show of the team as well as trying to earn a starting spot. We did a tournament in the gym. They had a bracket, and you'd be in the gym, 12 hours to pare down. So I just wanted to participate in the event. My coaches agreed to let me wrestle off at heavyweight. I ended up, beating the other guy, and went to Sunkiss, competed, and came back. And when I came back, the guy that the other heavyweight, he was injured. So I stayed up for the first weekend and had some success. And then the next weekend, wrestled in. And after like 3 or 4 weeks, I was, had won a bunch of matches, and my coaches just told me, hey, just keep eating. And that's how I got to heavyweight. So, but I had planned on going back down to 90, because there were 17 people that I lost to, and about 10, 12, 13 of them were back. So I wanted to get a chance to wrestle and get those wins back. But ended up moving up to heavyweight. And during that time, I always had, from my senior in high school, I had the desire to make world and Olympic teams. I had wrestled cadet nationals, cadet worlds, junior nationals, junior worlds. So I had the connection to international wrestling. That's one of the biggest reasons too that I picked Penn State, with their commitment to international wrestling. So I was on the national team sophomore, junior year, and but the goal was to make the Olympic team. And so after college, I I was full-fledged freestyle. I was still coaching at Penn State, so it gave me an opportunity to stay. But, through the years, I got exposed to training camps at the training center, got to train with Bruce Baumgartner a lot and, some of the other elite wrestlers. So it was good exposure. And then, just kind of started chipping away, made my first world team in 1998 and, won my match in the semifinals. It was protested and overturned and ended up taking fourth that year. And then 99, Stephen Neal beat me 2 out of 3 and he made the world team and won the world championships and then came back and I made the Olympic team and, good battle with Steve. And then, thought I was done, hung out for a couple more years, made the world championship team and came back 2003. We got the opportunity to wrestle in the world championships in my hometown in Madison Square Garden, which was awesome. It was rescheduled from 2001.
Super exciting. Yep.
Yeah. Incredible time. And it was, it was supposed to be in 2001. Obviously we know 9/11 happened. So, but it circled back and we got a chance to wrestle in 2003 and then 2004 made the Olympic team, competed. And that's how my competitive career ended. But during that time I was coaching and really keeping myself in position to be successful. So, stayed in shape and was able to go in the next couple of years and got named to the Olympic coaching staff in 2008. And, that was a pretty interesting year because it was the birth of my child, my first child. And then I took the job from Stanford, moved to Maryland, and then was coaching the Olympic team. So it was a big boost and a busy year. And then, just continue to move on and made my way up my coaching career and spent 3 years as a head coach at Stanford, and then 11 years as a head coach at Maryland, and then transitioned out for a year, and then got back in as a head coach and executive director at the California Regional Training Center.
That's unbelievable. I know Mike has a bunch of questions. You said something that kind of stood out. Taking you back to Longwood, right? You had Coach Ficozzi. Not many folks had a Division I. He was an Iowa State guy, I believe, right? So you had, and your partner, or I'm assuming it was your partner, Nick Hall. He was a cadet world champ, right? So you were, you're being humble. You were a cadet, right, runner-up. So you had a cadet world champ and a cadet runner-up beating each other up. I mean, how did that push you guys? And he was, I think you went to Old Dominion, right?
Yeah. So he was, again, so when you look at Longwood, so you have, Keith Ketchum was the direct connection to, our era. And, Nikki was the next big thing. So, I saw those guys that were around while I was wrestling. There were a lot of other great wrestlers that came up that you'd hear stories about, but Keith, he was around, and then Nikki was around. So you got to kind of be on the same page, and you would hear the stories of how Keith would train, and that inspired Nick, and then Nick would inspire us. So, it was going, it all funneled down from, Coach Ficozzi. He was just so, he had his NCAA plaques on his desk in his office, and they were just sitting there, 2-time All-American, and, he had beaten Barry Davis, who was a 3-time national champion, Olympian, so all these things that we, that we talked about and we knew, but it was just kind of the way things were with our program. So, it was pretty cool just to be able to be in that atmosphere, but it just kind of seemed normal. And then as, the classes continue to go through with Coach Ficozzi and the other coaches that were around and the success that we got, I was teammates with John Lange, who ended up being a 3-time state champ and went on, came to Penn State. We were teammates. He's a Big Ten champ and All-American. And then so many other people that came through that program. So it was just like the foundation of, all these great wrestlers that came through came under the coaching tree of Coach Ficozzi, which I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, we just heard the news about Coach Gianni passing, and that was Ficozzi's coach.
Huntington,
so
right.
He set the standard and passed it on to Ficozzi, and then Ficozzi passed it down to us. And, it was such a great, just a tree and a legacy that, started from back then. And, so when I think about my coaching career, I think about the opportunity to be able to give back and, do the things that those guys did for us and, continue to expand and help grow the sport in any way that I can.
New Hampshire coffee roasters are small batch craft roasters of 100% Arabica coffee beans sourced responsibly from around the world. We roast, grind, and bag all of our coffee in-house at our facility in Dover, New Hampshire. You can find our coffee in the area's best restaurants, specialty stores, online, and at our factory outlet. We make your love for coffee right with a variety of rich blends, flavors, and a taste that will have you coming back for more. Few take the pride that we do in making your love for coffee our business. New Hampshire Coffee Roasters, in your world for a reason.
It's amazing.
So speaking of, so now you're taking on a new role. I see that you have the California RTC logo in the back. So what is the, what's the role of, California is a huge piece of American real estate. What are you doing? So you're at Stanford. Talk a little bit about, are you coaching? Are you admin? Are you doing a little bit of both? Are you just working your kids out? What is going on right now with Coach Kerry McCoy?
Yeah, so my title is executive director and head coach. So I've got the administrative side and I've got the coaching side. So obviously, we all know the current state of affairs in our country. It's a little bit difficult to just roll around and be free just like any given time. So it's a little bit tighter here in Santa Clara County. So our activities have been kind of ebbing and flowing. We started off in the beginning of the summer, towards the beginning of the fall. We had a lot of training camps, we had workouts, we had some competition, we had guys competing around. And then as things started to tighten up, the competitive opportunities started to dwindle for a while. So we were training for a good bit. And then the college season started. So a lot of the athletes, they got focused with their college season and focusing with and there's some limitations that way. So the competitive side of training and physical activity has decreased a little bit just because, you have to be so much more careful and, the guidelines and the restrictions that are on, to make sure you're safe and you're healthy. The administrative stuff hasn't slowed down, much because one, you just always got to be prepared. You got to be planning. There's fundraising. There's, just opportunities to continue to promote the organization, promote the plan. And so it's just figuring out a lot of mental stimulation, for preparation for wrestling, but also organizationally, a lot of time when, budgeting and fundraising and, especially with the new year coming in, you got to kind of make sure all the books are straightened out and, get the board squared away. So there's activity going on. And, along with those things, I'm involved with USA Wrestling. I'm on the board of USA Wrestling and I chair a couple committees there, with a couple other organizations, Black Wrestling Association. So there's a bunch of things that I do to keep myself busy. And, in the midst of a pandemic, I'm just blessed that, God gave me opportunity to have things to do and, be able to support my family and be able to keep myself engaged mentally and physically.
Well, I'm into that. Now, the next thing is, so you brought up, the BWA and, I grew up down the block from you. I'm, by all accounts, a privileged white person. And wrestling is a meritocracy where, I had skin colors of all different shades kick the snot out of me as a kid. And I think that in the wrestling world, we go that way where, we don't, it's not until we step out of the wrestling room that racism and prejudice is really prevalent, which it is. Systemic racism is a real thing that is documented and we all can see and actually feel now. So talk a little bit, I guess, if you can, about, what you felt as, a Black kid growing up in New York and going through the world, right? I'm sure that if you went to an Asian country, they might have thought that you were a celebrity of sorts just because of your size and your stature, right? And then how it's kind of fitting into the BWA and what the emphasis is, the movement, what people can, start, consciously thinking about in terms of trying to make that organization more relevant than it is, more prevalent than it is, I guess, so on and so forth.
Yeah. No, it's, it's a pretty basic, you kind of hit the nail on the head, but it's a pretty basic concept that, being able to celebrate diversity is something that is, it's very important in our society. It's very important, culturally experience different cultures and be able to, recognize. And I think one of the biggest challenges of society is, a lot of people say, oh, I don't see color, I don't see differences. And it's like, well, that strips away the importance of, the diversity. So, if you're black, white, whatever ethnicity you have, and you just say, okay, we're all the same. Well, we're not all the same. We're all humans, but our experiences are different. So being able to recognize what those experiences are and be able to empathize, I can't say what it's like to be a white male going through, and you can't say what it's like to be a black male going through, but we can at least look at these things and say, okay, well, if I can take a step back and try to put myself and understand the perspective of others, that's really what the foundation for growth. And, we're all God's people, we're all children of God. And when it comes down to it, but unfortunately, not everyone in our society treats each other the way that, God would want us to treat each other. So, the idea with the Black Wrestling Association, and it was the brainchild, for lack of a term, of Nate Jackson and Kyvan Gatson, right after George Floyd was killed. It was one of those things that Nate and Kyvan got together, and they're pretty tight. And, it was almost like a sense of hopelessness. And as Black men in our country, in a society, you feel that way a lot. But in this situation, as it's been talked about before, right, to see this happen, live, and the way it happened, I mean, it was just one of those things that was a real culmination. And there was like this sense of hopelessness. It's like, I can do everything right. I can be, perfect in every way, and this still could happen to me, and it's just like that idea that, we all kind of carried with us for many years became so much more prevalent after that situation. So, Nate and Kyvan got together and got on the phone, started talking to people and connecting with their networks. And next, there were, 40 or 50, Black male wrestlers that was a circle that were able to get together and talk. And it was just like, it was one of those things that was like, hey, let's just get together and share experience and support each other and, be there. And that was what it kind of started at. But after that initial interaction, it was like, we can't just sit here and, sing Kumbaya and just like, okay, well, keep moving. We had to do something. And Nate and Kyvan, they started to expand and say, we need to create an organization, and the Black Wrestling Association was formed. And I was fortunate to be, one of the founding members that was invited to join. And the idea was, let's figure out what we can do. And we got together, and it was, we're all wrestlers and we all have different levels of success and experience in different things, but it was, let's figure this out and kind of build from the ground up. So we came up with a mission statement to inspire, connect, and empower Black wrestlers and allies to grow wrestling. And, we focused on grow wrestling through representation, equality, and opportunity. So it wasn't just like a situation where, we just want to get out there and, be a bunch of Black wrestlers that are, pumping each other up. It was like, let's really figure out how to grow wrestling, but the emphasis is on, this segment of the population, but we're not excluding anybody. Everybody's engaged. And, got together, came up with guiding principles, came up with a mission statement, came up with our board and build it out. And we wanted to make sure we had different segments of the population represented as we built out our board and just, organizational structure, and just kind of built it from the ground up. And we're still, the idea came about in June of 2020. So, we're just over 6 months in existence. And fully incorporated a couple of months after we started getting together and talking. So the idea is, to really inspire and connect and empower is the foundation. And, there are tons of great wrestlers, right? You can look at, and like I said, when I came up, it was Mike Vetrano, right? It was Nikki Hall. It was these guys that I saw every day, and one time a year for 45 minutes, if you happen to catch CBS Wrestling, you see the NCAA tournament. But I know one of the things that inspired me a lot when I was younger was in 1988, after the 88 Olympics, USA Wrestling had a poster, and it had John Smith and Kenny Monday, and it was a big white polar bear, an American eagle, and the white polar bear had the Soviet Union sickle on its arm, and the eagle, had its claws in a heart, and the saying said, taking the heart out of the competition. And so for me, I saw John Smith, a white male, and Kenny Monday, a black male, right? So right there, I had that image of, yes, this is something that I can do, right? But if you look through the years there, you don't see a ton of image. Kenny Monday in 1988 was our first Black Olympic champion, right? So you don't see the images. So for kids coming up and looking, right? Dan Gable, Bruce Baumgartner, Cale Sanderson, John Smith, Kenny Monday, right? Kevin Jackson is out there. You know, Lee Kemp is out there. Lloyd Keyser's out there, right? Greg Gibson. There's a lot of great, but you don't really hear those stories. You don't see those athletes celebrated in the mainstream. And is it malicious? I don't know if it's malicious. More or less like the blind spots. Like you don't think about it, right? When you think about NCAA wrestling, you think about Cale Sanderson going undefeated, right? You think about Kyle Dake winning 4 titles. You think about Pat Smith being the first 4-time champ, right? And then you think maybe Greg Jones, 3-time NCAA champion, who only lost, 4 matches. You think Ed Ruth, 3-time NCAA champ. You think about Jordan Burroughs, right? So it's like there are enough stories out there, but there's not necessarily a counterbalance of it. So the idea is to be able to show, young Black wrestlers that there are people that look like them, as well as people that don't look like them, and really help them to grow in the community. So that was a really long answer to why and how we came about. And we're functioning now. We've got initiatives that we're working on and really trying to make a difference in the wrestling community, officiating, coaching, administrative, just really trying to help grow the sport in a positive way.
Coach, it was an important answer. Before I get to the next piece, I wanted to talk to you about freestyle. Is where can we go? Where could folks listening? Is there a website? Where can we go to support that organization? Just want to make sure we get that noted.
Yeah. So for the BWA, it's pretty simple. It's blackwrestlingassociation.org. Pretty simple. I mean, obviously, if you Google search, Black Wrestling Association, or maybe not BWA, it wouldn't come up. But yeah, if you Google Black Wrestling Association, it should come up. Twitter, it's at BW Association _ Twitter and Instagram. And then we're on Facebook and we're on LinkedIn too, just trying to hit all platforms. So Facebook is just search Black Wrestling Association. And I think same thing for LinkedIn. So, we our most active engagement is probably on Instagram, but we also have those platforms covered, for all opportunities to get in there. And then, like I said, the website, and we will be launching a YouTube page soon. Once we get some more content, we've done a lot of stuff. We just haven't figured out the best, way and how to slice and dice it and edit it up. So, but we'll be
we're figuring it out too, but yeah.
Yeah, we're on YouTube, so we figured it out.
Yeah. Okay, so you guys tell us how to do it, and we'll rock it.
Coach, when I think of Kerry McCoy, I mean, obviously I have all these tremendous accolades as an athlete, as a coach, but also as a human being. I think you as an ambassador. So obviously, just to go back, you talk about your high school team. I think you probably had 3 Division I All-Americans, right? You had Nick Hall at Old Dominion. You had yourself, obviously, at Penn State. You had John Lange at Penn State. He might have been a little younger, but certainly close. And I believe you guys all wrestled freestyle, right? So
yep.
The things that Mike and I are we're proponents of freestyle and Greco. So think back when your time at Maryland, right? So I think you had one of your Americans was a heavyweight from Selinsgrove, PA, and others, right? Have you seen a decline in freestyle like across the U.S. or do you think it's still alive and well, right? Where certainly from a New York perspective, we're trying to like I said before, and push that. Yeah.
And I think that freestyle wrestling and Greco, but really, international styles.
Both freestyle and Greco, right? Yeah.
It's thriving. Just the idea, the opportunities are, so when you're in junior high school and high school, you can wrestle almost every weekend, right? You can go to a freestyle, folk style, Greco, every weekend for the most part. Now you can almost get a national championship caliber tournament at least monthly, if not more. So the opportunities when you compete in the younger age groups are a lot more. So then once you get to the next one, when you get to college, there are only a handful of opportunities to compete because the college season is so grueling and it takes a lot of time and energy. So, and then the focus becomes winning into a championship. So a lot of coaches, a lot of athletes focus on that. So you're wrestling folk style for majority of the time, and then maybe in the off season you do some freestyle. And I think really what probably was the biggest detriment to freestyle wrestling was during that period where wrestling went to, best 2 out of 3 periods. You can go out and you can tech fall somebody in the first period, score, 6-0, and then lose the next period 1-0, 1-0, or 1-1, 1-1. And then, in a cumulative deal, you outscored your opponent 8-2, but they win the match. right? Or ball grab, where you pull a ball out of the hat and, you know, you get to lock on the leg, and that, you know, that determined Olympic champions and world champions. So I think during that time, wrestling took a little bit of a hit on the international styles, because it really, the way I describe it, right? It brought the guys this level, brought them down a little bit. The guys this level brought them up. So it really made it, I guess, in a situation what, you know, the organization wanted to do is, you know, bring everybody on a more common ground, but it really didn't showcase the level of wrestling where it could be. So I think that took a hit, and that's when some of the international wrestling, you know, started to wane a little bit. And then, you know, it came back in 2013, 2014, when, you know, we almost lost the Olympic Games for wrestling, and, you know, a bunch of changes were made and rules and adjustments, and now we're on a resurgence. So I think we are in a pretty good place for wrestling. I think that the ability to, you know, expose yourself to elite level wrestling on a daily basis with YouTube, with Flow Wrestling, with Track Wrestling, with themat.com, and all these different websites that are out there, you know, the content like you guys with this show, I mean, you can get exposed to elite level wrestling in so many different mediums. And I think that's helping keep the sport growing. And really the biggest area that, you know, I'm sure you hear it talk about, but the growth of girls and women's wrestling, right? So majority of girls and women that are wrestling freestyle. You know, in the high school season, they're wrestling in the high school room, but most of their competition, if they're not wrestling on their high school team, is freestyle. And so there's a huge growth, and, you know, hundreds and hundreds of girls and women are competing in the sport on a regular basis, and majority of that is freestyle. So I think we're doing really well, and, you know, we're in a good position. And obviously with everything that happened last year with the postponement of the Olympics, it's, you know, it's a little bit of a downer, but, you know, we just had a major competition in France, and USA Wrestling kicked some butt.
Grand Prix, right? The Grand Prix.
Yep. And we've got these on these cards. I think there was one yesterday in Wisconsin where they had a lot of wrestling. You know, obviously Jordan Burroughs and David Taylor wrestled a week ago. There's you know, there's all kinds of stuff. You know, Tamira Mensah and Adeline Gray, you know, competing. So there's a lot of events that are bringing a lot of attention to the sport, and the college season hasn't even started yet. So, you know, once the college season gets rolling and you start seeing these big time matchups, I think it's good. So I think it's a lead into our international style being able to piggyback more now than they have been in the past. Because in years past, this would be all folk style, all focus on the college season. But now the freestyle events and, you know, some Greco matches put in there have been able to really spotlight the level of wrestling that exists in our country.
Wrestling, a sport measured by technique, mental toughness, discipline, and persistence. But it also brings children with all skill levels interested in the sport in droves when there's great coaching. Team Purcell Training Center in Iowa is at the epicenter of great wrestling. And being one of the best youth clubs in the Midwest, the center has a deep understanding for community and wellness. At the top of their game, they may be in Iowa, but they have nationwide appeal and a national model for success. Run by U.S. Veterans National Champion Anthony Purcell, Purcell's vision and mission of the center is to build children from the ground up with their wellness in mind. To Purcell, it doesn't matter if the children are novice wrestlers or state champions. His goal is to build character, create a positive, nurturing, and spirited environment, and to produce respectful ambassadors in his community. The training center benefits people from all ages, ranging from the average fitness workout to mixed martial arts, specialized youth training, and self-defense. Purcell Training Center, where excellence is the standard.
You know, I have a couple fire off questions that I wanted to ask you, Coach. If you don't mind, just as fast as you can, nothing that'll kill you. You can tell me to stop if you want, but
we all know, Mike, when we tell you to stop, you never stop. So anyway.
That's very, very true. Hardest worker as a athlete and hardest worker as a coach that you've come across?
In general, or?
Yeah, as when you were an athlete, who was the hardest worker that you came across? You know, you can name yourself, and then when you were a coach, you know, when you were done retiring, you know, whether you were an athlete or somebody else.
Yeah, so I always go back to my freshman year in college. You know, Kerry Colott. So coming up in high school, like I said, Nicky Hall, you know, he was the guy that set the standard, right? In college, it was Kerry Colott, and, you know, the awe and mystique of Kerry Colott. I mean, we'd go to practice and I'd say, hey, what are you guys doing today? Or, weekend workout, what are you doing today? And he would tell me this workout and I would be like, what?
You sure you want to do that?
Like, no, like that's and they would get after it, him and Sonny Abe and Sean Nelson and John and Russ Hughes. And I would just be like, what? And that's what I was told that's how Kolot did his entire career from, 5, 6 years old. I mean, they used to tell stories that if he watched TV, when the commercials were on, his dad would make him do push-ups while the commercials were on while he was watching TV. Or every time he had to go to the refrigerator, he had to do 50 push-ups or stuff like that. So I don't know how much of that is true, but, he was definitely one of the hardest workers that I saw as an athlete at that level. And, he had a ton of success. As a coach, there are a ton of athletes that I can go to. And, if I would say person that pops in my head, is a guy named Tanner Gardner who wrestled for me at Stanford. He was a 3-time All-American, Stanford's first 3-time All-American, great academic student, strong man of faith. He's really one of the guys that helped me to reinvigorate my faith when I was out here. But he was just on point, connected, very dedicated, very disciplined. So he would be one of the hardest workers, but there are tons. I mean, every place that I've been, there have been guys that would set the standard and, just kind of blow me away. When I look at, my time at Maryland, we talked about Yusuf Hamida, and Yusuf definitely was on a roller coaster, but, the traditional, and I'm biased, obviously being a big guy, but traditional, heavyweights seem to be a little bit less, less apt to work as hard and push themselves. And he had some ups and downs, but he was one of the guys that was definitely committed at the high level and did what it was necessary. And, fell a little bit short of his goals, but to be a 2-time All-American, for a guy that was a 1-time state champ, 1-time state placer in New York is pretty good. So, he definitely
he flourished with you for sure, Coach, 100%.
Okay, so the next question is, who was the best teammate that you had as a teammate? And, I guess you can answer that as a question that from a coach, but, as an athlete, who do you think was the best teammate?
So, yeah, I might make a couple people angry with this one, but I have to say John Lange, it's interesting because he was my high school teammate, he was a college teammate, and, he stayed connected with me. I mean, to this day, he lives 30 minutes away from me, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But when I was growing up in high school, I spent 90% of my time with John, and his family. I mean, most of the events we went to, his family were the ones that were driving. Workout partners, my senior, I was a 177 pounder, he was a 145 pounder. We were workout partners. We wrestled every day. So, that, and then going to college, being teammates, and then being able to sit in his corner when he won the Big Ten championship. And then, when he was an All-American, first wrestler to lose first round and come back and win 7 straight to take third.
Amazing story.
So, yeah. So I'd say, he's definitely, one of those guys that I would say would be behind the list. And internationally, I would say my buddy Dominic Black. Dom, right, Mike?
Sure, WVU guy.
Yeah, he was a training partner. I was his training partner. We trained together. We ran together, and so I'd say he was definitely one of my best teammates because he would show me things not to do and show me things to do. So it was good.
All right, as a coach, who was, you coach a lot of places, you've been around even as assistant. Who was the guy that, you were either in the corner with or that you were going against that you just felt was the most prepared coach when you were going into a dual meet competition?
Yeah, that's a good question because, again, when you're scaling the time from, as assistant coaches at Lehigh and Penn State and then going through, as a head coach. So, I mean, it's going to sound cliche, but right. I never sat on the other side of the mat from Dan Gable when his team wasn't ready. His athletes weren't ready. Right. So that's the same thing. And I'm not saying that we didn't beat them. Right. There were times when we beat Iowa guys and, took them out. I mean, my freshman year, we wrestled Iowa at Penn State in our duel at home. And, Kerry McCoy hit a flying cement job and pinned Bill Zadek. And, that's one of those things that it happened. And, Troy Sunderland beat Steiner in the duel and then lost to him beat him in the duel, beat him in Big Tens, lost to him at NCAAs. So Dan Gable was one of those guys I'd say, in the more modern terms. And again, it's cliche, and obviously it's going to sound like I'm biased, but I just look at what Kale's done with those guys up in State College and, it's pretty special what they've been able to accomplish. And yeah, you get David Taylor and Ed Ruth and these guys that are superstar athletes and going, but just the level of wrestling that those guys do. I mean, you very rarely see one of those guys, in that blue and white singlet that's not wrestling hard for the whole time. And, it's a credit to their staff and what they're able to do there.
All right, I got two more questions for you that are just a little bit offbeat from, the typical is, as an athlete, I mean, as an adult now, I assume that what motivates you, aside for getting up and working for God every day, is the love for your wife, the love for your family. So that's got to be the motivating factor right now. As an athlete, there's no wife, there's no kid. You're Kerry McCoy. You're at Penn State. You're on a road by yourself, running to make weight or just to get in shape. What is the driving factor besides winning? What's in your head as a young buck that's really kind of driving you forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, I don't want to disappoint you with some, boring so answer, but it's like, I always want to be better than I was before. Right. And what does that mean? It's a relativity, right? But how can I be better? Whether it's, personally, professionally, as an athlete, can I, and there's the point of diminishing returns that you talk about, but I don't look at it. I think it's like, you can always do a little bit more. So the idea for me is, how can I serve better? How can I lead better? How can I share better? How can I, whatever it is, how can I be better? And so, the running, it's like, okay, when I used to train as an athlete, I used to think about, I'd have different scenarios. So if I was doing sprints, if I'm doing 5 sprints, some days it would be the rounds of the tournament, right? First round, second round, quarterfinals, semis, and finals. Other days it would be my competition, right? Tolly Thompson, Stephen Neal, Aaron Richardson, like the Russian, the Turk, the guy from Uzbekistan, like those are different things. And it's just like, I would be constantly trying to find ways to challenge myself so I can get, instead of just like, okay, going to do this sprint. So it's always like, how can I get better? Okay, I just won my first match of the NCAA tournament. Now what do I need to do? I need to make sure my mind's right, get ready for the second match. And, so my focus when I'm just out there grinding is always try to get better. How can I be better? How can I do better? And it all comes on the umbrella of being able to serve, and make the world a better place, which is a little bit cheesy, but I think that's where it comes from.
You want the best of high school wrestling? Long Island Wrestling Association's website brings you the best. Wrestling is one of the toughest blue-collar sports. The sport has tens of thousands of followers, and at the center of it all is the Long Island Wrestling Association, measuring the gravity of the sport. In 2002, National Hall of Fame wrestling inductee Steve Meehan created the #1 source for wrestling news in New York State. With contributors like Long Island Sports Hall of Fame inductee and historian Andy Slauson, the site is the most comprehensive wrestling website in the country for high school wrestling news. With in-depth analysis, entertaining facts, forums, and trending topics, this site has a treasure trove of historic high school wrestling information, with records dating back to the 1930s. There is no better source for high school wrestling coverage. Long Island Wrestling Association, keeping the wrestling world up to speed.
Last question from me is alternate reality, different space. Kerry McCoy is a rock star in a band someplace, a farmer. What do you do if you're not Kerry McCoy, you're not wrestling, and you're able to, go do something different?
Yeah. So, and I failed to mention earlier in my story, right, that my path that I thought to greatness was going to be in basketball.
Okay.
Right? I wanted to be a basketball player.
Okay.
I thought,
thank
that's
God
where,
you didn't. Yeah, thank God.
Where it's going to go. So, I often think about, if I would have committed the amount of time and energy to basketball, what type of success could I have had? So I think I look about that like, being in the NBA, balling it up. I think that might be.
How tall are you? How tall are you?
About 6'2".
Okay.
Give or take.
Look, don't ask height questions or anything like that. I've also had the dream of becoming in the NBA.
No, I wanted.
Right?
There you go.
He's a big guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that would be, NBA lifestyle. That might be fun.
I had a question about when you were, when did you feel like, I'm Kerry McCoy and I arrived? Was it when you talked about going back as youth and winning that, sectional Olympian title? Was it when you walked out and you had to pinch yourself and you're at Madison Square Garden and there's thousands of people? Was it NCAA title? Was it making the Olympic team? What's one moment that you'd say you had to pinch yourself and go, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm Kerry McCoy.
Yeah, no, it was, I don't think I ever really fully got it to that level. My sophomore year, so when I came back and after 17 losses, I came back and I was wrestling, I was kind of chipping away and I was winning a couple of matches. I think in the Big Ten finals, I won in overtime. Then I came through and had a couple of matches at the NCAA tournament I won. And, I tell a story after the NCAA tournament, my sophomore year, I had no idea, right? I had to go right to drug testing, right? And, there's all different, you have an hour to report, but I was like, I literally walked off the mat, right? Got my gear on, got my award and went into drug testing. And after you wrestle, you're fully dehydrated. So it took me 2 hours before I could, go to the bathroom and give a sample. So I came out of the arena and it was dead empty. No one was around. My parents were outside waiting for me. So I was just like, all right, well, I guess this is what it's like to be, the national champ and, get some time off and get back. So it was just like kind of wrestling through. But my junior year, I started to feel pretty good. And I was, I was expected to win more matches than I was the year before. And it was going. And then my fourth year, I took that year off to train for the Olympics, so I was still at a different level. So probably maybe halfway through my senior year, I kind of felt like, okay, so 1997, so I was 94. I was third on the national team. 95 I was fourth. 96 I was third. So 97. So I'd been on the national team. I was in the U.S. Open finals. Wrestled Kurt Angle. So I had some success there. Then I'd won a national championship, and I was took third and coming back. And so I kind of had state championship, NCAA championship, international competition, and I was wrestling pretty well, feeling good. I was healthy, and so I'd say probably maybe mid to late January of my senior year in college is when I kind of felt like, all right, got a pretty good handle on this sport. And, I think you can do all right in it. And, knowing that's when, the focus was shifting to the next Olympic Games and, what was going to happen after wrestling. But yeah, I think maybe, that was probably it midway through my senior year.
You talked about being healthy. How did you fare? Obviously, wrestling, it's a tough sport, right? How did you fare physically? Do you still have any effects in terms of injuries? Obviously, we're all getting older and it's tough to get out of bed, but, lifelong things you're dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, so my sophomore year, I got a compressed vertebrae in my neck, and I was fortunate. Great, Dan Monthly was a trainer at Penn State, and he, great rehab, great treatment. But my freshman year, I went, and this is some stat that my coaches used to, like to talk about a lot. I didn't go into training room one time my freshman year in college, not once, not for ice, I never went to the training room. And then my sophomore year, this happened in probably mid-November, early December. So I would go in for treatment just to get, some massage and stuff like that. But I was very fortunate throughout my college career to not have any major injuries. Internationally, I was pretty healthy. I mean, stretch here or there, but no major deals. And it was 2001, about 3 weeks before the World Championship, when I had, a more major injury. I tore, and I never went to I didn't get an MRI or anything. So I either tore my labrum or I tore my pec. And that's something that I just rehab, because it was 2 weeks before the World Champs was supposed to be in September. So I'm not going to not wrestle.
Yeah.
So I was just doing rehab and treatment for that. And, then 9/11 happened and it got postponed. So I got 2 more months of rehab before I wrestled and came back. So that was probably, between my neck, and that was just getting treatment and, massage therapy. And then my shoulder, my pec in 2003. And yeah, so I was fortunate. I didn't have any surgeries throughout my competitive career. I do creak and, crumble a little bit here and there, but, that was one of the things that a lot of people, and I wrestled through 3 Olympic cycles, 96, 2000, 2004, and then coached through 08. So, so 4 Olympic cycles of activity and then coaching. I was staying on the mats, all the way through my last year. At Maryland, I was wrestling, 2 to 3 days a week. So I stayed active and engaged. And one thing that I think, especially when you get in a coaching realm, The first couple of years I was kind of a little bit more, I wanted to win every time in practice, right? But then as it got on, it was more about the guys and helping them get better. And then as it got on, it just, I tell people I check my ego at the door. And I think that's when a lot of people get injured at any level, but especially when they're coaching. You want to go out there and, 35 years old, wrestling with a 22-year-old kid, and, they're going this way, and you're like, I'm not going to give a takedown, and you hang on too long, and next, pop, right? So I kind of checked my ego at the door the last few years of my coaching career. So I was able to keep that going. And now I try to stay, I don't work out anywhere near as much as I should, but I try to do something a couple times a week just to keep the blood flowing. And, so I've been pretty healthy, pretty fortunate, and, get in, do a couple push-ups here and there, and just keep that blood flowing.
So that's the last thing that, or leading into that is, Kerry, being a college coach is just, it's more time demanding than just about anything out there, right? Intellectually, you have to be, on top of the recruiting field. You're at, the universities that you were at are academically, prestigious, Lehigh, Stanford, Maryland, so on and so forth. You've gotten away from that. You have a little bit more space in your head. What's something, you've heard a lot of stories that, I've told this story before, and that's great. What's a story that you haven't told? And is that something that's going on right now where, in this, I don't even know what chapter it is, but it's a great book right now on something else that you're picking up, woodworking, just being with the kids, or learning soccer because you're the youth coach?
Yeah, that's interesting because I was just thinking earlier today, and it's the idea of being able to sit down and have dinner with your family. That's something that the average person takes for granted, right? Because there were, in 11 years, well, I guess the first 2 years my kids were really younger, so it wasn't, but in probably 8-9 years of coaching, when my kids were growing up, I may have had, outside of, Christmas dinner and Thanksgiving, which, not all those, but I may have had, 10 times, 15 times that I, would have dinner with my family, at our dinner table. And, it's such an important thing to do. And just like as coaches, like we're always grinding, like practice is 4 to 6 o'clock for most of us. So, most people, regular people, they eat dinner 5, 6 o'clock. So by the time I'm finishing practice, my wife and kids are eating dinner because they've got to get homework, they got to get showered, get ready to bed. So I'm coming home at 6:37 and they're, winding down, getting ready. So, so that idea of just being able to spend time, I finished coaching after the 18-19 season. And that year from 19 to 20 was such a rewarding time. And I just was able to do so much more stuff that I just, I don't want to, overplay it, because it's like, we choose the lifestyle that we're in, right? We choose to get up at 6:30 and get in the office, and we choose to, after practice, stay in the office and send a couple of emails or call recruits. And a lot of coaches do a really good job of managing that. They only make calls when the kids go to bed, or, they leave their cell phone for the first 2 hours when they get home. So there's ways to do it. And I have to admit that, I wasn't, I don't think I was terrible, but I wasn't the most present husband or father during my coaching career. So I look back at that and say, I was just so blessed to be able to have that year where I didn't have, those obligations, and I could get up in the morning and drive my kids to school, and I can go pick them up at school. And then when they had events on the weekend, I can go and be the school play and go and watch the performance. So, again, you can do all that stuff when you go on full tilt, and a lot of coaches do. And it was just like, for me, I had that switch where it's like, okay, when I'm focused on the team, I'm focused on the team. When I'm with my family, I was still kind of focusing on the team, and that it was hard for me to turn it off. So, once I stepped away from it, it was really rewarding. And I think my family enjoyed it a little bit. I think they got to the point where they were a little bit annoyed that I was around so much, and they were just like, why don't you go do something?
Yeah,
But
get out,
so
go for a walk. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that idea of, I haven't picked up any real new hobbies. One thing that I did in between, especially when COVID hit, but just during, I have about, 90% of my college matches on VHS. I have a good, 60% of my international matches on VHS. So I spent a lot of my time last year, a year and a half ago, with transferring those VHS to digital, editing them up, and then putting them up on a YouTube page. So a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, I haven't done it in a while, but I'd probably say there's 30 to 40 of my, college, international, even some of my high school matches. The Longwood Sagem dual meet match was there. My state finals are on there. So that was a pretty cool thing, just to be able to do that and, get into the website a little bit and manage that. So just, trying to stay present with my family has been the shift, the new, I don't say the new chapter, but, that's been the shift, is really being able to spend time and reconnecting with my family. And then, trying to find ways that I can serve. We took a mission trip. My son and I took a mission trip 2 summers ago to Greece, and that was incredible. And, just trying to be able to be more present. Like I said, I don't think I was terrible, but I definitely wasn't as good as I could have or should have been. So
Jenna Burkert was on our show, just recently and cited you, but she said something that really, I probably heard it before, but it just stuck. She said, I'm trying to be where my feet are. And, the way she said it, it sticks in me, trying to be where my feet are. And I think that's really, really important. And people have probably learned that more now than they have prior to COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so easy to, again, that's a great analogy, because it's so easy to be somewhere else where you're sitting in the living room with your family, but you're on your phone. Right. And it's not even, and I would look at it as, I gotta text this recruit. I gotta text my staff. We got a meeting and all that stuff. But a lot of times you're just in there scrolling through results, right? You're on looking and seeing who's wrestling what, or what competition, or who, and it's just like, yes, it's important to stay connected, but at the same time, you can do that later. Or so it is important. Just, back in the day, it was harder to do that, right? It would be hard, 20 years ago to not be engaged with your family, because you didn't have a phone that you can just get on and see everything that's going on in the world. Maybe you were sitting there reading the newspaper, but it was a lot harder back in the day. And now it takes a good amount of discipline. And the funny thing, I've had this conversation a bunch of times, when you hear somebody that doesn't have social media, or doesn't have a cell phone, smartphone, or, isn't on in today's society, like, what's wrong with that person? And it should be the exact opposite. Like, yes, that's where I'm gonna go. And I don't think that I will do it, but I always, joke and say, yeah, I can't wait. I just want to go get a flip phone and just use my phone for calling, and that's it. I think I'm a little bit too connected, but that is something that I imagine, and see if it ever happens.
I still have a flip phone. I activated it about 18 months ago, and I pretended to go off the grid, and it was, besides from the one time my mom tried to make homemade pizza, it was the worst experience of my life.
Talking about Zadok. Didn't Zadok go off the grid? Isn't there a story, Zadok? I think he went off the grid or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he left the world for a little while.
Yeah.
But anyway, Coach, go ahead.
Well, I say I got a buddy who every couple of, I don't know what the time, for every couple of months, every year or so, he gets a new cell phone, and he doesn't tell anybody his new number. He's like, people want to get in touch with, they'll find a way. And then, once he gets to the point where there are more, enough people, he gets a new phone. He just goes and gets rid of that phone and gets a new line, and just, that's his way of dealing with it. And that's like, that's admirable. I don't think I could do that, but it's pretty, one way to go about it.
Well, Coach, I'm glad we had your number. Like I said before, you're a tremendous ambassador for the sport. I think we can talk to you for hours. I mean, you're an inspiring guy. You've won at every level. You're a great athlete, a great coach. Sounds like a great family man, and we appreciate having you on. I hope you enjoyed spending some time with us.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate it. And I know you guys got a good slate on there, but hey, let's do it again sometime. We got a lot of stuff going on in the next few weeks and months that we can chop it up. And obviously, this centered around me and my experience, but I'm more than willing to talk about other stuff that's going on. So, if you guys will have me again, I'd love to come back.
We'd love to have you.
We'd love to have you again, and definitely extend the invitation to, the guys at the BWA, or whomever's in your network that you think that would, benefit from, chatting with 2 Long Island meatheads. We'd be happy to take them on.
We have three Long Island meatheads. We have
yeah, we got 3, and then we got Matty D on here too. So Matty D is a genius, and then it's Billy's pretty smart. I mean, me and you are meatheads, Matt. Let's be honest.
That's true. I agree with that. Yeah.
All right, Kerry. Thanks again for everything, man. It was great to have you talk with us today.
Yeah,
Kerry
appreciate
McCoy.
it. Thanks for the
Kerry
opportunity.
McCoy, thank you very much. The
Yep,
real
take
McCoy.
care, guys.
See it.